Meet a Georgetown County native who's returned home to serve small businesses and stimulate the economy. Coming up next on Carolina People. Good morning. Welcome to Carolina People. This morning we're at the Fox 43 studio. We're focused on the Georgetown County Chamber of Commerce, and we're visiting with its president, Steve Jones. Good morning, Steve.
Good morning. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much for coming in. It is so exciting to hear about some of the encouraging results of your now recent tenure, your addition to the Georgetown County Chamber of Commerce, and to see how things are going. It's been so exciting to talk to folks down on the south end and to hear that things are really beginning to blossom.
Thank you, Craig. I've been here about a quarter now, since January, and it has been going very well. And it's been enjoyable to get back into work in my home county.
Absolutely. Yeah, let's talk about that. You originally grew up, you were born and raised there in Georgetown?
I was raised over on the backside of Georgetown County, the poor side of the county. My dad managed Mount Pleasant Plantation for Mr. Defoe, who was the lawyer of Mr. Yockey, Tom Yockey, of course, who has other properties in Georgetown County also, South Island, North Island, and parts of Cat Island, which, of course, he's donated to the state and has a foundation there to preserve it for wildlife. He also had a hunting club over in Pleasant Hill area, which he hunted quail and, of course, brought down his ball players to hunt. And over on Mount Pleasant Plantation, had cattle, about 600 to 700 head of cattle, and, of course, had a very good fishing pond. So I got a chance to meet Ted Williams and some of those ball players when I was young, and they were gods.
Oh, yeah, Steve, that was amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, so it was really enjoyable.
And the great thing in that aspect is they were out of their element. They were not up there, they were down here, and so I'm sure they'd be much more open to talk about anything.
Exactly. Of course, everybody likes kids, and even the ball players would take time with you.
Wow. What was that like growing up in Georgetown County? I know you say it is a huge county. Geographically, I think it's the fourth largest county in the state.
Right.
It is. What was it like growing up in Georgetown County?
Well, of course, for a boy who liked the outdoors, it was wonderful because we had the river and of course, had all the natural resources of the farm and the woodlands to go hunting in, and of course, went and played sports in Andrews High School. And of course, we were not integrated back then, so it was a time in the past. And of course it was a rural area, and we were fairly protected, if you will, from some of the larger things in life, and of course definitely some of the things in society today. So it was a sheltered, I think, good way to grow up, and for a boy that liked the outdoors.
Did you have brothers and sisters?
I had two sisters. Wow. And they enjoyed it too, but I don't think as much as me, because of course they wanted to be in town.
Right? Yeah. not outdoors. Now it's been exciting for your dad. I mean, the opportunity to expose y'all to that setting, of course, a large plantation setting.
Yeah, he loved it very much, and he wouldn't have done anything else. And he worked there for over 45 years, so as you can tell, yeah. And then he originally grew up in Florence, so he retired back over there when he got ill health. But yes, it was a wonderful experience for him.
And the addition for you, having just been on, as you said, a little more than a quarter, do you still have family in Georgetown County?
No, all of my sisters have moved away. We still have a little farm over near where we grew up, and of course it's in timber now. And so I get back over there, and it's your special place where you like to get away and unwind. That's my special place, and so I get over there when I can. And so this job's allowed me to be a little closer to that.
Absolutely, to the farm, very definitely. How about did you stay in school in South Carolina after high school?
Went to Clemson and graduated in '68. Went in the military for 2 years, served a year in Turkey during that tour, and then went back and did graduate work at the University of South Carolina.
Okay.
And then after that was able to work with the Alcohol and Drug Commission as executive director in Greenville, South Carolina. And during that time, I had a chance to work with Senator Thurman's staff and others in Washington on federal grants, and had the opportunity to go to work with him. I guess that was in '74. So
In Washington?
In Washington, yeah.
Golly.
So from a boy from the country going to the big town of Washington, it was an exciting experience.
I'm sure that's what Senator Thurman said about himself in the late 40s. I guess in 48 or so.
Exactly.
Boy from the country heading to Washington.
Washington,
so
exactly.
He was probably excited to bring guys like yourself up there.
Well, he was like a father or grandfather to us, to be honest with you, Greg. You know, you grew to love him very much, and I spent over 8 years with him, and it was a wonderful experience. And he was a great mentor and a great person to try to emulate, because he has all those wonderful characters.
What was it about him that was so magnetic? What was it that turned so many folks, gave him that good feeling?
Greg, of course, as you know, he passed away last July, and a few clubs asked me to come and talk about and reminisce, and it was a wonderful opportunity for me to kind of reflect back and on his life and some of the things he had done and experience that I'd had. And you know, he was just such a if you had to talk about some of his qualities that just jumped out at you, one, he was tenacious. I mean, he would just never give up. He didn't know the word no. I mean, if he wanted something and thought it was right for the state or for the country, I mean, he was going to give 200% to try to accomplish it. I think the other characteristic that was so strong and so good about him is he was he was served the people, and he never did feel that whatever stature in life he got, that he was any better than anybody else. And he was there, and as you know, his accessibility, people having the opportunity when they came up, I mean, he would throw staff out talking an issue to meet people from South Carolina. I mean, he was a people politician, and so people respected that. And I think those were two of his great qualities, other than honesty, intelligence, and those other things which naturally he had.
Truly the people's senator. You know, you hear about senators who are amazing with constituent services. Even Ted Kennedy, you hear about Senator Kennedy's staff, incredible about getting letters out, and you heard that about Strom Thurmond's
Exactly.
staff.
He was known as one of those constituent senators, and he was a legend when it came to that. And he trained the staff, and of course you worked until you couldn't stand it anymore, but you weren't working any harder than he was working. So I mean, he set the tone at the top, and everybody followed. I'll tell you a little story if we've got time.
Please, absolutely.
When I was working at the Alcohol and Drug Commission, they asked me if I wanted to be considered for a position on its staff. So, of course, I sent up my resume, and I was working in the office one day, and, of course, the secretary was all excited, said, "Senator Thurman's on the phone. Senator Thurman's on the phone." So, of course, I thought it was probably a staff person, and I picked up the phone, and sure enough, Mr. Jones? Yes, sir. Of course, right away I knew it was the senator. And, he said, "I got your resume here. I was looking it over, and you might want to come work for me." And I said, "Yes, sir." And so I had interned when I was in graduate school with Governor West, who, of course, was a Democrat. And Senator Thurman was at that time then a Republican. So I knew I was not going to have the opportunity to work for him, because I knew he was going to see that. And so, of course, I kept waiting for the punchline, and I knew it. And finally, someone said, "I noticed you work for Governor West." And I said, "Yes, sir. I interned with him and enjoyed it very much, learned a lot, and I appreciate the governor letting me intern with him." He said, "Well," he said, "don't worry about that." He said, "I was an independent, a Democrat, and now I'm a Republican." He said, "That won't keep you from coming from working for me." And that's the kind of fellow he was.
Wow. That must have been where you thought your heart was going to drop. It just stayed up.
Exactly.
That is exciting. Of course, that ability for him to constantly reach out to folks in their youth. I mean, you were in your late 20s then.
Exactly. And of course, here again, he said once he's elected to represent everybody. And his staff was taught that no matter what background or what political party or whatever, I mean, he or she was a constituent, and they were to be served. And that was part of his success.
Was that tough leaving the Palmetto State to head up to Washington? And
No, it was exciting, Greg.
Really?
I mean,
Yeah.
I wanted to, as you know, some people want to stay home and others want to kind of see the world.
Mm-hmm.
I was one of those that kind of had wanderlust. And after I graduated, I had a chance during my Army career to work in the Pentagon for a little while before I got out. So I wanted to go back to Washington, and actually I wanted to work in the State Department and get into international affairs.
Really?
So having the opportunity to go up and work with the senator, it was, it was a dream come true.
When those staffers, when you're in the office, and of course I saw you were an executive assistant, I mean, you were right up at the top.
Right.
I guess there's a chief of staff,
Right.
and then you and a couple others, which is a huge position. When you're in that position, does it give you the feeling that maybe I could do this, maybe I could represent people? And when you see you're working so hard to represent others and to serve the constituents, do you ever think, maybe I could come up in this capacity?
And a lot of, as you know, a lot of staff members do go ahead and get in politics, and some are successful and some aren't. But I mean, you work hard and you get caught up in it, and of course there's a thing, as you know, called Washington Potomac fever, which people go up to Washington and they don't want to leave.
Right.
And I never caught Potomac fever, but I would have loved to have represented the people in an elective office.
Right, either the low country or the upstate, of course, or even the Midlands.
Exactly.
So you've been in all three parts of the state, the real principal parts of the state.
Right, and it's a good state, Greg.
Yes,
yeah.
it is. It is. Now the state brought you. Now, of course, you maintained residency in D.C. after you left Senator Thurman's office. What was after?
Well, I had an opportunity to go over Congressman Hartnett, represented the 1st Congressional District, and I was ready to make a change and do something different. So I helped him when he established his congressional office, and that was fun, helping with the startup. And he's a wonderful person. And of course, he served 6 years. He was one of the congressmen that went up on a self-imposed term limitation. And while I was working with him, of course, Dr. Edwards was appointed Secretary of Energy under the Reagan administration. And, of course, Dr. Edwards had been governor when I was working with the senator. And we'd become friends and worked together on a number of projects for the state, me representing the senator. So he asked me to come over and serve as his chief of staff at the Department of Energy because he was looking for somebody that had Washington experience. So had the opportunity to do that, and we stayed there about a year, Greg, before he left there and resigned there and went back to become president of Medical University. And by that time, we were getting along famously, so I became his chief of staff down at the Medical University after leaving Washington.
You came back to the Palmetto State, and in this instance, back to the Low Country.
Correct, yeah. Some of the things at the Department of Energy, Greg, was, well, I worked in the Senate, so I got a feel of the process and how the Senate worked. Of course, then worked in the House, which, you know, while it's a legislative body, it has its different rules, and of course it's a different place. So I had that opportunity, and then of course working for executive agency, for a cabinet level secretary, which again was a learning experience. So, you know, my career, I've just been blessed in being able to experience some wonderful workplaces.
Absolutely, really 10 years in Washington. When you talk about the Pentagon experience, and then the 8 years in Thurman's office there, and Senator Thurman's office, the year with Congressman Hartnett, and then golly, that's a big.
It was fun, Craig. It really was. Two of the, I guess, most unusual opportunities I had while at the Department of Energy. Of course, you had a chance to represent the cabinet secretary at high-level meetings, you know, and meeting in the White House, and you know, that's kind of heady stuff, you know, and you feel like you're contributing. Also had the chance to spend 24 hours on the USS Ohio, which was, of course, the second nuclear submarine of that class, and with Admiral Pachoco and a group which was, and Dr. Edwards, of course, was secretary, and that was an amazing machine to be on. And then had the opportunity, most people don't realize, but the Department of Energy is responsible for all of the nuclear weapons, which, and the idea is you don't want the military making the weapons and dropping the weapons. You want to have that civilian control. So I had a chance to see a detonation of a nuclear device out at the Nevada test sites.
Wow.
So, I mean, it was some wonderful experiences that, I never would have been able to experience otherwise.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
And what was that like? Y'all were far enough away. I mean, but can you even relay that, or is it just something you'd have to see?
No, it's one of those things that's just an experience.
Yeah.
I mean, one, to see the device,
Right.
and everybody tiptoeing around. I mean, it's almost like a spiritual thing to have that much power in one instrument, if you will. And then secondly, of course, when it actually is exploded, and of course they've got all kind of instrumentation, as you know, they're trying to read all kind of data out of it to make sure it's accomplishing what they want to accomplish.
Right.
But it's like of course, it creates an earthquake. So you have what they call out there, they say, let's rock and roll. I mean, that's when the explosion is, when's the next rock and roll?
Yeah.
So you rock and roll, and then of course you have a chance to see all the craters where all of the earlier
after effect.
And it's interesting, but I came away from that with a great respect for the folks and the scientists that work on this, Greg, and the here again the dedication and the security and the other issues that are all involved in something of that complicated, and the safeguards that need to be kept in place. So it gave me. Some people leave Washington and they worry about the future of the nation. I left Washington and it gave me confidence that we had a great country and a great government, and remain optimistic about our future. Yeah.
That optimism is something you've been able to hold for the 22 plus decades hence.
Well, I have, and I am an optimistic person, and I think those are the folks that accomplish things, folks that think things are going to be better and work to make them better.
We've got about 10 minutes, and so I want to make sure we focus on Georgetown County and the Chamber of Commerce, but I don't want to gloss over 2 decades at MUSC as the chief of staff there, under Governor Edwards, and then.
Well, Greg, I think the here again, it was a great satisfaction working there. And when Dr. Edwards came, the budget for the medical university was about $167 million a year, and when we left, it was over $800 million a year.
Wow.
And of course, one of the things that I'm most proud of working with him there is the research. We came in, and there was only like $6 million of research being performed at the academic institution, and now they're up to like 170 million in research. And of course, what does that mean? That means that people in South Carolina are participating in the new healthcare revolution. And it means that you and I, or our families, if they get sick, we can participate in those drug trials and those new technologies and devices that might save a life, where otherwise we would have to go to Duke or to Johns Hopkins or some other facility. We can now do that in South Carolina. And it also allows us to participate in that new economy. And as you know, the governor talks about diversifying the economic mix of South Carolina, and the universities, University of South Carolina and Clemson and the Medical University. I mean, they're really contributing now, and of course they're working together to try to even boost economic development and research even further. So it's good for the state, it's good for the citizens of the state.
It is amazing to think of some of the things that were accomplished even down in Charleston or throughout the state. The Comprehensive Cancer Center, that Strom Thurmond Biomedical Research Center, the Environmental Hazards Assessment Program, so many of the aspects during Dr. Edwards' tenure and your involvement there as chief of staff that you got to think. Not that you take credit for it, because there's so many folks, even lots of volunteers involved in making those things happen. But golly, that's got to be really, really gratifying.
Well, Craig, as you know, it's been said that success has many fathers, and it takes a lot of people to make things happen, and you're exactly right. But, for example, with the Hollins Cancer Center, as you know, just this year, I mean, they announced the Hollins Cancer Center annex over in Georgetown County, working with the Georgetown hospital. So, I mean, here again, without a strong cancer center at the main campus, they wouldn't be able to go ahead and start branching out and even becoming more close to those that use their services.
Yes, very definitely. Let's talk about that now, branching out. Now, have you moved fully to Georgetown County?
Right now, my children are still in school in Charleston,
right.
So I'm running back and forth. We have a house at Pauld's that we've had for years. My wife's family had, so I'm staying there part time and then burning up that US 17.
Yes,
back and forth. But yeah, so I'm partly moved, I guess, is a short answer.
Right, and that must be enjoyable, seeing some of the growth up and down. I mean, there's obviously still some low areas there, undeveloped territory,
right.
But a lot of development that's happened in Georgetown County.
Right, and Greg, I mean, that's why I'm optimistic. I mean, if you look to the north with Myrtle Beach and all the activity that's going on here, you know, if you look to the south with Charleston and Mount Pleasant and all the activity going there, I mean, Georgetown County's in the middle. And as you know, we aren't kind of part of Charleston and we aren't kind of part of the Strand. We're kind of in between. So,
absolutely. But
people we still have those natural resources that people want to come to, and we have the port, and we still have a lot of undeveloped land, and of course we've got fairly good highway transportation systems. And I was coming out of the visitor center the other day, and I assumed this was a man and a wife, and they'd just gone through the Kaminsky Museum right there next door to the visitor center, and the wife was about 10, 20 yards in front of the husband, and the husband said, "Well, what do you think of Georgetown?" And she said, "I've just fallen in love."
Oh, wow.
So, I mean, that's the kind of response that you get, and you know your community is a place that's attractive, and people are going to want to locate.
Absolutely. One of the other great things is hearing about how the community continues to bond together, either on recognizing folks committing great charitable donations to the community to see what happened with the Bunnell estate, I believe, as well as to see the commitment of groups like the March of Dimes had their Walk America in Georgetown a couple of weekends ago, and to have been worried about it not being like normal, to see them come in at their goal.
Well, here again, I think crisis, as you know, tends to pull people apart or either pull them together, Greg. And if you look at when the steel mill closed down, I mean, you had the churches and people just, you know, had special events and parties and Christmas presents were gathered for those who had lost their jobs. I mean, I think that speaks so well for the community and the people and how their hearts went out for those who were experiencing difficulties during that time. So I'm like you. I mean, I think it's a fine community. It's made of good fabric, and we're going to do well.
Steve, what was it about the opportunity to come work at the Georgetown County Chamber of Commerce that really interested you? And what do you, I mean, obviously there are a lot of reasons why the board sought you out or the search committee worked so hard to get you up here.
Right. Well, Greg, it was part of that public service. I mean, my whole life has been public service and trying to help, and that's what makes me have fun. And so, of course, when the steel mill was in the news about the steel mill having difficulty, that's when I started coming up to see if there's anything I could do. And just like you say, we ended up getting with the Chamber of Commerce, and so it's just great to be working back in my home county.
What are some of the big pushes that you all recognize? We got about 3 minutes, Steve. When you think about aspects that you all really need to focus on.
Well, Greg, I think, you know, chambers basically do two things. If I had to speak specifically to the Chamber of Commerce in Georgetown County, I mean, one strategic plan would be economic development, prosperity. I mean, we all want higher paying jobs and more opportunities for young people in the county. So we're doing everything we can to work with the Economic Development Commission and others within the state and the county to hopefully create a small business center of retention, expansion, and recruitment. And we've got a number of grants in now that would help us do that. So serve small business and to help them be more successful. Of course, small business is basically our constituency. And then the second big area, strategic plan area, would be, of course, value to our members. In other words, as you know, any member organization has got to present value or have value for those members, either you're going to lose them. So we're trying to develop more programs that the members will find useful, that will help them in their businesses, make additional contacts, and those traditional programs that chambers have usually done in communities throughout the nation. Business after hours, leadership, Georgetown, those typical things where networking opportunities. And of course, we'll always have our annual meeting, and we'll have a good speaker in this year. We are working on the Harper House, which is an 1850 house, which will have a Maritime Museum in it. We're working with the Harbor Association. That's going to be a fundraiser of about $300,000 coming up, and we hope to start. Hopefully, you'll start hearing about that this summer sometime. So, those are some of the initiatives that we have underway, and hopefully, it'll be successful.
Steve, with more than half your life in some level of public service, to think back on that time, can you think of, as you look at it now, if you weren't currently in that position as president of the Georgetown County Chamber of Commerce, what do you think you'd be doing?
God,
put you on the spot. That's right. Would you be I mean, it's great to bring you back to Georgetown County. Obviously.
Yeah, well, Greg, here again, it would probably be something in public service. I would hope it would be something in the state and working to help the state, because that's kind of what I've been doing my entire career, and I'm loyal to the state and love the state, and of course love my home county.
Absolutely. Steve, thanks so much for being with us this morning.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Absolutely. Stay tuned to more Carolina People with Steve Jones coming up next. You heard him say the words. The words were simple. After more than a decade of public service there in Washington, he was returning to the Palmetto State with optimism that America would be strong, it would maintain its strength, and it would continue to grow. Return to the Palmetto State, and after more than 2 decades in the Low Country, he's now making that trip on a regular basis up to Pawleys Island, and recognizing the strengths in Georgetown County, his home, where he grew up, are going to keep him here. Public service gives him great satisfaction, and you see it every day in Steve Jones.